What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So today I have for you all, of course, a cadaver team. Now, a lot of you may be about to click off the video just for the fact of seeing Krisk. I do want to say Krisk is not needed. However, I have him in the team, so if you're wanting to do this damage or even more damage, you're probably going to want to have him. So if you don't have Krisk and you want to do this team still, it's going to work. I'll talk about some substitutions you can make, but you may have to do normal. You could possibly do hard depending on what other champions you possibly are able to substitute in for him. But either way, this team, of course, using cadaver as the main damage dealer, which as far as the whole cadaver debate, is it a good thing for the game? Is it a bad thing? Should they change it? Should they nerf it? I'm not going to get into that in this video. However, you can leave your comments down below. It will help the algorithm, which is much appreciated, and also dropping a like. But this team is something I'm pretty proud of. Obviously, I did not come up with a cadaver strategy. I think Victor Tez kind of made it pretty popular with Hydra, and all I'm doing with this team is making a few tweaks. So the best version has 2 Yumekos and some other crazy champions. I have 0 Yumekos. There's also versions of it on normal that use cadaver plus 3 buff extenders, but I was thinking, I want to have 2 buff extenders because having 2 buff extenders instead of 3 adds room for, well, some extra damage or some other potential interesting things. So what I've done is I've added the most recent fusion champion, Yumeko. Yumeko is in the team. We have Krisk, we have Anchorite. Both of those are our buff extending champions. We have Cadaver for all the damage. Lydia for the decreased defense and weaken, scales faster. She also brings the increased speed, which is on everybody, unlike Krisk, which is only on everybody except for him. Makes some tuning kind of weird if you do use Krisk's increased speed. And I'm going to talk about why Krisk is actually replaceable. But Lydia, fantastic for the entire team, increased speed. And then, of course, we have Brogni. Brogni is required. You have to have Brogni. There's no substitution for him whatsoever because he's the one who's going to increase the value of the shield. Yumeko does do it as well. However, it's not significant. It's capped at 10,000 HP, so it's going to be pretty small over the course of the match, considering Brogni is increasing it by crazy high numbers. Now, this run right here, this is turn 17. I want to see what Cadaver hits for, and then I kind of want to show you about how fast this team scales. So that's the biggest thing. People message me, hey, I'm trying to do an Infinity team, and I'm having a hard time getting it to scale. So they'll finish the entire run on normal or even hard with a team that should be doing multiple billions of damage, but it's only doing like 500 million. So way below what it actually should. So the key to scaling is a few things. You want to make sure your Brogni hits extremely hard. You want to make sure you have Hex. You want to make sure that you have a decreased defense and or a weakened champion to help your Brogni hit even harder. You want to make sure your champions are fast. You want to make sure you have a shield set as well as a shield buff. And you want to make sure that everything else in the team makes sense. For this particular setup, we have Brogni giving himself the increased attack. We have Anchorite providing the increased crit rate as well as increased crit damage. So Brogni is able to be built at 70% crit rate, and then his crit damage is just going to be boosted even more. So you'll see here, turn 24, our Cadaver is hitting for, let's see in just a moment what he's actually hitting for. But it's okay numbers, nothing crazy, but right now it's 192,000 damage. Now Brogni with his A2 hits pretty hard. Let's go ahead and fast forward a little bit to let's go to the 30-minute mark. This match was like about 40 minutes long. Right here, Cadaver's hitting for 2 million. So on turn 94, Cadaver is hitting for 2 million damage, which is probably 30 turns past the one-shotting the heads. At about 1 million is when he's one-shotting, which you can see here. I believe he should one-shot this. It is hard, so it's a little bit different. And obviously, when you're watching this, you can change the gearing to what difficulty you're actually doing. You don't need these speeds, these stats for normal. You can drop it back a decent amount. But for hard specifically, you do want to try to shoot for these stats. Now, Brogni, watch how much his A2 ability does for the shield growth. Once he gets there, we're going to fast forward just a little bit more. Brogni coming in again, a little bit more. Why do we keep skipping to Brogni's turn? That's crazy. Every 30 seconds, Brogni takes a turn, basically. That was awesome. I skipped it, and boom, Brogni. Back to his A1, though. I want to see what his A2 does, because it hits pretty daggone hard. And this is what you want to be shooting for your Brogni. Now, here we go. Boom. So Brogni did 411,000 damage on that head. 193,000 on that head, 254,000 on that head. Now, just for some quick maths, let's go ahead and do 411 plus 193 plus 254. So all those numbers together, 858. Let's go ahead and times by 0.3. That's going to give us 30%. So 257,000 is the amount of shield that is added to Corpulent Cadaver from that hit. Now, Corpulent, in case you don't know, let's go ahead and check out Brogni's actual skills real quick to give you an idea of how much shield growth he's actually getting. So Brogni increases the value of shields by 30%. based on the damage inflicted. So just then, he actually did a little bit over the damage I calculated, because we have this head over here, 17,000 is pretty low, but about 257,000 shield was added onto Corpulent Cadaver. Now, Corpulent Cadaver is going to do damage based on the value of his shield. Doesn't matter if it's a weak hit, doesn't matter if it's through Poison Cloud, doesn't matter any of that. Doesn't need crit rate, nothing. But he's going to do 30% of that shield in damage. See right here, the damage is equal to 30% of the value of the shield. So just from that hit, we're going to get times 0.3 again, 77,000 damage added onto Corpulent Cadaver's damage. That's crazy. So my Brogni is going to be adding significant amounts of damage to Corpulent Cadaver every time he's using that A2. So ideally, you want him to do two things. You want him to use that A2 as much as possible, but you also want to make sure he's hitting very hard. Having Yumeko in the team allows Brogni to get refreshed, well, relatively often because of Yumeko's A2. I'm going to get into all the ideas behind these roles of champions in just a minute, but let's go ahead and look at this a little bit more. So we didn't have decrease or weaken on this head over here. That's a big chunk of damage missing. We did have decreased defense and weaken on both of these heads, and this head was not decapitated. There was times where it was like 600,000, 400, 400, and like 500,000 damage. So it was crazy high numbers, and you're going to scale very quickly, allowing you to, at the end, go ahead and finish with 1.6 billion damage, which translates over into Hydra Clash damage, being about 3.3 billion points for Hydra Clash, which currently is putting me at the highest for the clan. But either way, let's see. 3.3 billion damage. That is a pretty significant chunk of damage, and I haven't done my Nightmare or my Brutal Keys yet. So let's go ahead and talk about this team, talk about the ideas behind the roles. But first, let me go ahead and give you guys the actual stats, because if I show you in the champion select screen, it's not going to show the actual stats because it doesn't give me the Hydra stuff. And I will try to remember to click through on the Hydra stuff on each one. But here it is. Corpulent Cadaver, he is a damage dealer. Krisk, he's not needed. He does bring a lot, which is why I have him. He brings a few things. He brings plenty of resistance or plenty of buffs on his A2 ability, places extra continuous heals on himself, allowing him to be a very consistent mischief tank. Give him a lot of resistance. He's going to be solid. He brings that. He brings a provoke, but I don't really use it that often. I really don't use it at all, to be honest. And then he brings an A1 with an AoE skill, but it's also got a decreased speed. So he places a decreased speed, helps you get more turns, especially on those decapitated heads. But in general, Krisk is not required. He does bring a big shield at the very beginning, but Yumeko can do the same thing just from his A2 ability, places shields every time he uses it. Then we have Anchorite. Pay attention to the stats on the right side of the screen because this is going to help you when you actually go to build these champions out. Anchorite is bringing increased crit rate plus increased crit damage for Brogni, making him that much better. And then the A2 is increasing duration of all ally buffs. Plus the A1 also works well if you have a curse set or whatever, maybe a provoke set if you really want it, but it's an AoE attack. So this is excellent. The heal doesn't matter because you're not going to die. Lydia brings the A2 with the decreased defense and weaken plus a strengthen and increased speed. Very, very helpful. And then Yumeko, he is doing the A2, which is going to reduce the cooldown of all ally skills except his champions by 1 turn, allowing you to bring only 2 buff extenders and run everybody still pretty fast, which is very nice in my opinion. Turning off the A3 and then opening with the A1 just because of how the speeds in this team are. And then Brogni, he's built to hit hard. He's in lethal. He's built to do some good damage. I still have to ascend some of his gear. But of course, opening with that A3, give him increased attack. You do want increased attack on your Brogni. It's going to make him hit so much harder. And then from there, just using the A2. So now let's jump into the actual gearing of these champions and see how everything is breaking down. The stats are high. They are high. But if you want to go back to normal, you can drop the stats a little bit. I'm also going to show you guys probably in the next few days a team not using Krisk, still doing very good damage. Probably not going to be free to play, but this stuff's not free to play anyways necessarily. Well, technically, this team really didn't cost me much money because Krisk was kind of free because I got him from Champion Training Tournament. I spent like 160,000 points. So while it wasn't free, I spent some points. I really didn't spend that much. I got very lucky, granted. I did prepare for a while. Nobody else in my bracket pushed, but I did earn Krisk. Brogni was a fusion. Yumeko was a fusion. Corpulent Cadaver is a rare. Anchorite was an epic, and then Lydia is a free champion. So, I mean, I could possibly put free to play in the title, but that would get my video disliked into oblivion. This is my first video back, so I don't want to be disliked into oblivion. So don't dislike the video, guys. Give it a like. So Krisk, he's in Cursed. You want Hex. You need Hex. You are required to have Hex because if you don't, you're missing out on millions of damage. You can see right here, Krisk did 494 million damage, and I can promise you that was not from his A1 ability. He does not hit that hard, but the Hex being shared damage from Corpulent Cadaver's huge hard-hitting A1 ability is allowing Krisk to benefit from that damage because if it's Krisk's placed Hex, he gets the benefit from that. Honestly, I would love to have curse set on Anchorite as well. I just don't have a fast enough curse set. But here you go. You can see when Corpulent Cadaver hits one of these heads, how much damage is shared. Like at this point in the fight, he was hitting for like almost 10 million per hit. So once Corpulent Cadaver goes, if he ever does, boom, the damage shared is insane. So he did 11 million hit on that head, shared 3 million, 3 million. So ideally, you'll hit heads that don't have hex. So then they take the full damage, and then these other heads take big chunks of damage as well. That is a huge boost in damage. You got to make sure you have hex on somebody, or just bringing in a Michinaki. So Krisk, he's built very fast. He's built with curse set. Fast, great resistance. You got to make sure your resistance is good for whatever difficulty you're doing. You can check out the Hellheadies website, or you can join my Discord channel, and I have a breakdown on kind of the stats you need, resistance and accuracy. So make sure your resistance and accuracy are both good. As far as Hydra battles, these are the actual stats that I have. And then from there, I mean, you're pretty decent. Like Revenge accessories, excellent option for Krisk. I'm not a huge fan of having refresh or even reflex stuff on him, because with Yumeko on the team, the resets are pretty consistent. But if I have reflex or even refresh, they become a little bit, one's wasted because Yumeko reduces by 1 turn, the refresh or reflex reduces it, and then you end up having like a useless set or a useless skill. So I just opted to go for Cursed. Skills fully booked. We have Cruelty. I would love to have a higher star Cruelty on somebody, but I don't at the moment. For Masteries, honestly, War Master would be even a little extra boost in damage. Cycle of Revenge is a questionable master to have, to be honest, because with this team, outrunning your buffs is an issue, on Corpulent Cadaver specifically and Brogni. But those 2 champions, don't put Cycle of Revenge on them. Everybody else should be perfectly fine, as long as they're not having any issues with outrunning their speed. But Lydia places increased speed so frequently, it shouldn't really matter. But Krisk, I mentioned that he could be replaced. So who could you replace him with? Well, you could replace him with Demitha. You could possibly replace him with Lanakis, depending on how fast your teams are. You could replace him with a lot of different buff extension champions. His primary role is mischief tanking and extending buff durations. So if you could get somebody in here who could also mischief tank and extend buff durations, well, then you're solid. Ideally, you could have somebody bring in decreased speed as well, but if you can't, it's not the end of the world. You're still going to be having increased speed. You're still going to one key is out of the question. You're still going to do 1 billion plus damage on normal, assuming you try that out, as long as your champions are very fast. You're going to have to change the builds, but Krisk is not required. I see so many people saying that he is, or thinking that he is, but he's not. You can definitely do it without Krisk. So next up is Yumeko. Yumeko is not required. If I didn't have Yumeko, I would use a buff extension champion. However, it'd make this team a lot different, and I didn't want to do what everybody else was doing, so I built it with Yumeko. So Yumeko is in Reflex, very important, makes the run a lot safer. The more often he can use this A2 ability, the better it's going to be. So he's in Reflex. If I had a Refresh, I would use it as well, but unfortunately, I only have Revenge accessories. He does have an A1 skill that increases the value of shields on the lead spot. So Cadaver, he's in the lead spot. This is going to boost his shield value, which is excellent. However, it's capped at 10,000. Make sure you have a shield set and a shield buff. Those increase separately. You can see the grow shield pop up twice in this battle whenever he does do that. Let's see in just a second. Whenever Yumeko does an attack, you'll see the grow shield do twice, or even when Brogni does, you'll see 2 grow shields. That's growing the shield set as well as the shield buff. But you can see there from the A1, it's growing both those shields. So that is definitely something you want to do. It's going to make your run scale so much quicker. So it's required, honestly. If you want to do any good damage, that is required to have. So there's A1 is A2, very simple, places the shield. Once again, another reason why you don't need Krisk. Decrease the cooldown of all ally skills, which is the most important. I have Brimstone on him. Very nice to have at the very beginning, but then when the heads are decapitated, it doesn't really matter, and they end up not taking turns anyways. As far as the Masteries go, this is what he has. Cycle of Revenge is nice to have on him, but like I said, Brogni and Corpulent, you don't want it on those champions. As far as the speeds and the other stats for this champion go, Resistance is nice to have on any champion you can get it on. But if you can't, don't stress it. Ideally, make sure Corpulent does have it. Well, we'll talk about his build more once we get to him. But for Yumeko, I just got him fast, really. 301 speed, push up the speed on him, make him fast because he's the one who's allowing you to have only 2 increased buff duration champions. Plus, he's resetting Brogni, allowing you to scale faster and making the whole run smoother. So 301 speed on Yumeko, and then the rest, just get whatever stats you can. Ideally, Reflex. If you can't go Reflex, you're going to probably be okay without it, but really try to get Reflex if at all possible. And then Brogni, he's in some good damage dealing gear. That's really all there is to say about that. For Hydra specifically, he has lethal, like I said. He has 84% crit rate, but we're keeping the increased crit rate up from Anchorite the entire match. So he has a little bit over 100% in this situation, 114, I guess. That doesn't matter. The extra 14 is irrelevant. Very good crit damage, good attack. Hard to scale his attack because he only has 782 base attack. So definitely something you gotta be careful with there. And then the speed, I just have him a little bit faster than Corpulent Cadaver. I don't think it really matters if you have him faster or slower. There's possible benefits to each, but make sure that Corpulent Cadaver doesn't have the highest crit rate on your team, because he could be the one being targeted from the very beginning, because the very first Devour from the Hydra is going to be on the champion with the highest crit rate. It's supposed to be. That's what I've heard is going to be. But my Brogni is the one who's always targeted, and he does not have the highest crit rate, which you can see here that he was the one who's targeted. So I'm not really sure exactly why that was happening. Maybe somehow he has different, maybe it's crit damage. Maybe it's crit damage. That would make more sense. But either way, let's continue with this. So with Brogni, very good damage. Make him hit hard. Make him have good speed, but do not make him too fast. That was an issue that I had. If he's too fast, he's going to outrun his buffs. You're going to be placing the increased attack all the time. It's just going to make your run just stumble and fumble and then be ruined. So make sure he's at a good speed. Keep him close to Corpulent, and you're going to be fine. Do not let him outrun his buff. So 206 speed, perfect. Well, with Hydra bonus, he's like 214 or 218. 218. Skills fully booked. Blessings, I would go anything from Phantom Touch. I would go anything from Cruelty. A lot of different things you could go. But for Masteries, I don't have Giant Slayer. Giant Slayer would be fantastic for extra damage from the shield, but Helm Smasher is going to help me do more damage on the Hydra heads. So these are the setups that I have for Brogni, and so far it's working pretty good. Now, the next champion is Anchorite. Anchorite doesn't need to be Anchorite. That could be Demitha, it could be Lanakis, it could be another Krisk, it could be a whole variety of different champions, but for me, he brings a very good A3, increased crit rate, increased crit damage, and then the A2, increase the duration of all ally buffs. Now, if you have it, if you can make him this fast in Cursed or very close to it, or this fast or close to it in Provoke possibly, I'm a much bigger fan of Cursed, then do it. Because to be honest, Krisk sometimes misses the Hex on the Head of Mischief, and then your attacks from Corpulent go wherever. And that's where you'll get ruined. If the Head of Mischief steals the shield from Corpulent, especially, the run's over. If he steals it from Krisk, the run's questionable. If it's a massive shield and then the Head of Mischief spreads it, the run's probably over. So if you can have two champions placing an AoE chance at Hex, that's going to be fantastic. However, I don't have the curse gear to do that. My curse gear is kind of questionable, to be honest, so he's just in fast gear right now. Just fast set, and I'm hoping for the best. I did have to reset the run more times than I would have liked, but it did work out in the end, and it was all worth it, I'd say. But cursed, I don't have very, very, very few options, so I can't run two sets of it, but if you could, definitely do it. I do have revenge stuff on him as well. Revenge, once again, he has AoE A1 ability, so I want to get as many War Master chances as I can. So these are his masteries. This is his setup. So far, it's worked out fantastic. So just a ton of speed, revenge accessories if you have it, possibly refresh, maybe accessories as well. But then again, you get into the thing with Imic resetting plus reflex or refresh. It gets a little bit weird. On Brogni, yes, get as much resetting stuff as you can. Reflex isn't going to work out great. You're going to lose too much damage from that. But refresh accessories could do very well. Anchorite's Masteries, you already saw those. And then next up is Corpulent Cadaver. Pretty simple build, to be honest. You just want him to be very high resistance, because if a buff gets stolen from him, or if all of his buffs get stolen, well, the run's over. That's really all there is to that. It is done. It's complete. I had it stolen at like 40 minutes into a match, 900 million damage. I had it stolen, and then I had it leave. Thankfully, I did, because that was well before I even tested this team, and that was on normal as well. But if it gets stolen, the run's over. So make sure you have a ton of resistance. You can still get 3%, but push up the resistance, his speed, keep him slow. You don't want him outrunning stuff. Doesn't need crit rate, doesn't need crit damage, everything else. Just let it go as it is, and you're going to be perfectly fine. Defiant Gear, it's going to make him take less damage from the AoE attacks from Hydra. Less damage you take, the longer you keep your shield being pretty big, the better it's going to be. Retaliation plus revenge accessories, more counterattacks, the better. If you can make him counterattack all the time, it's going to be excellent. But other than that, it's really just making sure he can resist the stuff and then running the match. It's pretty simple, to be honest. His A1 is the only thing that matters. In the Masteries, we have War Master because, let's be honest, if you're doing 3 million damage, the next best thing is having an extra, 4 million damage from, actually no, a little extra damage from War Master hitting, right? So if you're doing 3 million, an extra 50,000? You got to do that, right? You got to take every little extra bit of damage you can possibly get. Let's go ahead and see. How much does War Master hit for? Doesn't really matter, to be honest, but it's going to be a little bit added over time. Krisk has a few extra hits there from the Hex damage. And then him, let's see if War Master procs. It didn't, just regular hit. Either way, a little bit of extra damage over time, not a problem whatsoever. So we do have War Master on my Corpulent Cadaver. Next up is Lydia. Lydia, I believe, is the fastest on the team. She keeps up the increased speed the entire time. It never falls off. Increased speed, strengthen, which also helps keep the shield on Corpulent Cadaver nice and healthy. And then accuracy, pretty solid. Decreased defense and weaken. Make it to where you're doing even more damage from Brogni. And the run becomes, well, pretty simple, guys. This run was basically 90% auto, except for the fact that I had to click the heads. It was auto in the fact that I didn't manual the skills, but I did click the heads. So as far as my head targeting priority, the Head of Mischief, if it comes up, I want to kill it. However, there's some situations where the Head of Mischief is not my priority. If the Head of Mischief is up alongside, say, the Head of Decay or the Head of Poison Cloud, I forget what that one's called, but if the Poison Cloud head is up and it's getting close to taking a turn and I can one-shot, I will actually target that one first, especially, well, specifically if I don't have Hex applied to the Head of Mischief yet. Because what happens is if you attack the Head of Mischief and it end up redirecting it to, say, a decapitated head, well, now you have the Head of Poison Cloud plus the Head of Mischief together. So the Poison Cloud is going to be placed. Krisk will not be able to place the Hex, and the Mischief has a chance to steal the buffs for 2 turns, which is very, very bad. So make sure that you take into consideration, hey, we have Torment, we have Mischief, we have the Poison Head, and we have possibly Decay. Which one's going to be the most important to kill? Maybe if you have Decay up and you have Hex applied on the Head of Mischief, but you're not for sure if you can one-shot it, maybe it's best to go for the Head of Decay, because Decay is just going to cleanse Mischief if you don't kill Mischief or Decay right then. So you gotta be very careful. You gotta be very mindful about which head you're targeting, because it is a situation where sometimes you gotta juggle, hey, I can't target Mischief. I have to take the chance in him possibly stealing the buffs, but I have to target a different head, because if I don't, the run's really gonna be ruined because Mischief will have 2 attacks versus 1. That's a little bit of the extra theory that I have, and kind of just from testing it. The things that make this run fail are basically if you get a big shield stolen. A big shield being stolen is going to make the run fail. A champion being eaten at the wrong time is going to make the run fail. Specifically, if Corpulent Cadaver is ever eaten. You cannot have him eaten. So what happens is the very first turn, it's going to be Brogni. Brogni gets eaten first, and then after, at least for me, and then after that, it's going to be random. It could go to Corpulent Cadaver. If it does, just reset the run. After that second champion's eat him, then if it goes to Corpulent Cadaver, there's a chance that you could be one-shotting the heads at that point, but to be honest, you don't want Corpulent Cadaver to even be the 3rd champion eaten. You don't want him to really to ever be marked at all, but if he is, you want him to be the 4th or even 5th champion marked, because anytime before that, he could very well get eaten by a head. Well, then your damage is out the window, because all the previous 1,000 turns of ramping damage with Brogni is wasted because he eats the shield too, which is crappy. But either way, just some things to keep in mind, some things to take into consideration. Hopefully, this big breakdown kind of shares with you my thought process in building this team. I am going to do some without Krisk. I know people have mixed opinions on this team, but hey, if people are building them and you want to try it, it's going to be hopefully helpful to you knowing these few different things to do. So once again, make sure you have a shield set plus a shield buff. Make sure you have Hex from somebody. My Corpulent Cadaver. Actually, who do I have shield set on? I think I have it on Lydia. So shield set plus the shield buff. Make sure you have Cursed or Hex on somebody. Make sure your champions, your buffs, are fast enough to be, well, outrunning your Corpulent Cadaver and your Brogni, because those 2 champions need their buffs the entire match. And you can see at these late turns, we have 15 turns, 16 turns of all these buffs. Same thing with Brogni. I could maybe even go a little bit faster on these champions because we're getting plenty of extra buff turns. But so far, this has worked very well. I haven't fine-tuned it to go ahead and increase their speeds a little bit. But right now, perfectly fine. Heck, even Krisk has plenty of buff still on him. So a few different things that I could possibly scale the damage a little bit more with to push this damage even higher. What I could do is have another champion with Curse set on, because you can see right there that at the end of the fight, Krisk did a ton of damage, all from the Hex. He didn't keep Hex up on everybody all the time. If I had 2 champions with Hex, like you can see right here, Hex is not on this head over here on the far right. Hex probably won't even get placed on this head right here. Like right here, Krisk just goes. He did place Hex on both, and sometimes he does, but sometimes he doesn't. So if I had it on 2 champions, both those champions would be pretty consistent, especially being 2 AoE A1 champions, the second being Anchorite. It'd be a very consistent Hex being placed, which is exactly what I want to happen. So more Cursed, more Hexes going out, possibly 100% crit rate more War Masters wherever I can get them, more damage on Brogni. That would be fantastic as well. Refresh accessories on Brogni also, if I could get that to happen. Unfortunately, I can't because I don't have anything, even anything that could possibly lose some damage like this. I could possibly switch that out, but I don't know if that would even work because, I mean, it's a 5% chance over the course of a fight. It could just be bad. I do need a Cycle of Magic on him, honestly, but either way, there's a few things I could tweak, a few things I could change to push out a little bit extra damage, but in general, this is the team that I'm running. This is the damage that I dealt. I do have some ascensions I think I can make, actually. Let's see real quick. Brogni. What's your boots? We've got some extra attack percentage there, extra attack percentage there, and then just defense, and some flat attack on the top, which honestly, flat attack on Brogni isn't bad. Like I said, his base attack is very, very bad. So 80 attack is like 10% extra attack on him almost, isn't it? Yeah, that's actually crazy. 10% extra attack. So this is 5%. It's actually better to fully upgrade this than take this from 5-star to 6-star. Huh. That is actually quite surprising. So Brogni's attack scales very low, and 782. Pretty bad. But I will push that up. I'm going to try to get that to like upper 4,000. Well, let's say mid 4,000s. That'd be nice. A little extra damage. I would love to push into Brutal. Maybe. I don't think so. I think Brutal's quite a jump. But either way, guys, hopefully you enjoy the video. Thank you all very much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll catch you all in the next one.